Is there really any trade destination that makes sense for Ja Morant? I honestly, off the top of my head, I cannot think of one team that could use that specific archetype of player. And that's not to be disrespectful at all for a player that was once viewed among the most brightest of talents in the NBA, especially with his ability to get downhill and towards the rim. He was a human highlight reel at one point and leading the Grizzlies to multiple playoff runs. But we are so far away from the 2022-23 campaign in which Morant last made an all-star team on averages of 26.2 points, 5.9 rebounds, and 8.1 assists, while completing 46.6% of his field goals, including 30.7% of his three-point shots. And it's that last part to me, at least on paper, that makes a trade for a player making as much as Morant difficult to discern in terms of who could actually use a player of his ilk. Because Morant, as we all know, though he has typically excelled in attacking the rim and getting downhill and putting many guys on highlights, he has often struggled to knock down that three-point shot, no matter if it's in the corners or above the break, just wherever on the court. He struggles to knock down those threes, and as a result, he's a career 31% shooter from three-point range. That, in my opinion, in today's NBA, just does not cut it for a player making as much money as Morant is, and at the position that he plays, right? It's not like he's a center. It's not like he's a big out there shooting low volume but he's adding in other areas. Listen, we know that Ja Morant at his best, when he is able to generate all the downhill rim pressures, can be a rather impactful player if, and this is a big if you can surround him with a supporting cast that kind of masks that issue, because his sheer dribble penetration opens cutting lanes for guys. It allows you to get the ball to the bigs out of the dunker spot, and there are things that you can do for him, do with him rather, that allow your team to flow with an offense that can be sustainable. But with Morant not necessarily been a great or even good three-point shooter, it always puts a cap or a limitation on how impactful he can be, especially in the confines of playoff basketball where defenses change the way that they play you. And for me, at the very least, my opinion on this is that I just don't know if the Grizzlies are going to get back the type of return that they seek as of right now for Morant. I think we're very, very likely to get a level of return that the Atlanta Hawks got for the likes of Trey Young, right? I don't think this day and age you can. There's a lot of value in a point guard making that much money that can't shoot. Now, Memphis is reportedly prioritizing young players and or draft compensation in any type of deal that includes Morant. But at this point in time, I just don't think they're going to get what they seek. I think they're going to end up selling tremendously low on Morant just because his value is in the gutter right now. That's just the reality for a player of his specific skill set. Now, I think one of the biggest things to keep in mind here is the contractual differences between Morant and Young, right? As of right now, Morant still has 2 years and $87 million remaining on his deal after the 2025-26 season ends. So that means that he will potentially be under contract through the 2027-28 season, which does give you a little bit more value juxtaposed to Young's situation where he is available to hit free agency this summer. That within itself does tend to usually generate more value because you got a guy under contract for at least 2 seasons, and a lot can change in 2 years, right? You might be able to sell Morant on the idea of staying past those 2 seasons if things go well, if you're able to build a team around him that makes use of his skill set and hides or masks some of his deficiencies out there that are pretty well pronounced at this point in time. And if it doesn't, you can potentially pivot. It gives you a little bit more time to figure things out. Juxtaposed to Young's situation where, like for the Wizards, a destination that he apparently wanted to go to, which I couldn't understand that line of thought for the life of me, but apparently it's a sentiment shared among many players right now in league circles. But Young can opt out pretty quickly, but the contractual differences between these two is something that you have to keep in mind in terms of potential trade destinations. But the reality is, if you're trading for Morant, the real hope is that it's not just because you want to get up off of dead money. I suppose that could be or bad money rather. I suppose that could be a potential avenue a certain team could explore out there. But I think the real thing, if you're going to try and acquire the services of Morant, if you're going to try and buy low on him or some type of situation like that, it's going to be because you hope that Morant can get back to playing the level of basketball that he had, 4 years ago. But that's a long time from now. That is such a large window, especially for a player that has become so reliant on his explosiveness. Somebody we know that used to be able to get downhill at the drop of a hat and with ease. And he has been sapped of that, especially over the last couple of seasons, dealing with some of these injuries. It's not a given that he will get back to the level of play that he was once able to put on display. And with Morant, right, we know that he has never played more than 67 games in any one season. And he's appeared in just 77 games since the start of the 2023-24 season. This is a guy that has perennially rather missed time each and every season. It is not a given to stay on the court, especially at pivotal stretches. Do you really want to put stock in trading for a player that is consistently injured? I think that is the real question here. Is there really a team out there that can afford to make that type of swing and miss? I just don't see it as of right now. We're talking about a player, at least through 18 appearances this season, that is averaging 19 points, 3.2 rebounds, and a little over 7.5 assists, but he's shooting just 40.1% from the field, including 20.8% from three-point distance. I'm not going to lie to you. The counting stats on the surface, if you're just looking at 19, 3, and 7, that might seem appealing to you, but the efficiency with which this man plays with, combined with the amount of money that he is making, that is not all that enticing, at least in my opinion. Not enough to give up serious draft compensation, not enough to move off of serviceable role players to acquire him, unless you feel like you can take that swing. And I'm just not sure there are many teams out there, if any at all, that can afford to do that. Now, I know Sam Quinn recently wrote a piece on this, including a number of teams. I think he included 5 that he could potentially see making a trade offer, or at least trying to acquire the services of Morant. And those teams were, if I'm not mistaken, the Minnesota Timberwolves, who could potentially pair him with the likes of Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle, but would ultimately need a third team to probably step in there, say the Indiana Pacers, which was the deal that he put on the table for that, in which they could solve some of the issues they had with the absence of Miles Turner by having Minnesota include Naz Reid in a return in exchange, a couple other pieces, some filler included in that. I know the Sacramento Kings were also listed in that in that article as a potential trade candidate for, or a mock trade for, Ja Morant. I don't think that makes any sense at all with the direction that they're heading in. They really need to be going full steam ahead in terms of a rebuild over there. I don't think they need to acquire anybody to try and, a reclamation project for better, for all intents and purposes. I don't think that's a good destination for him. I know that the Toronto Raptors were on that list. I guess that can make sense if you're a Raptors fan and you want more star power over there, but I just don't see how that makes any sense. The Milwaukee Bucks were included on there. I think that's a horrible trade for them. I don't think they should trade for Ja Morant at all. That one included Kyle Kuzma, Bobby Portis, and Ryan Rollins. And I know the situation they have going on over there with Giannis and trying to sell him on the long-term fit. And we already know there's just been so much that's gone on with Giannis in Milwaukee. The will they, won't they type of thing in terms of whether or not Giannis is going to be there past this season, right? Because we've seen rumors coming out the wazoo left and right for them. But I just don't think that's a good place or a good fit for him. The Phoenix Suns have been listed by Quinn as a potential team, pairing him with the likes of Devin Booker out there and Dylan Brooks, who we know has a history with Morant over in Memphis. I guess you could probably sell Morant on the idea of getting back to his glory days next to players that are familiar with him. But does Phoenix really want to do that when they've had a really good start to the Jordan Ott era? I don't know if they want to kind of throw a wrench in things and try and change things up by executing a deal like that that by sending out the likes of Jalen Green and Nick Richards and filler to get that job done. I'm not sure any of these destinations make sense, but yeah, I mean there are certainly teams out there that could make it work from a monetary standpoint if they wanted to. But at this point, I just don't think that we're going to see whatever team that trades for Morant. I don't think the Grizzlies are going to get the return back on investment that they had originally paid out. This could potentially be ending in the same way that the Trae Young saga in Atlanta did, and that's sad because these are two players that were once at the top of their respective class in terms of sheer impact and star power out there. And I think it goes to show you the devaluation of the archetype, right? And Trey Young and Ja Morant are not even close to the same types of players, but they play the same position and they're not big guards. And in the case of Morant, he can't shoot. So there's always going to be a certain limitation imposed upon you from an offensive standpoint with a point guard like that that demands touches that cannot play off ball nearly as effectively as many of his peers. So I think we're slowly but surely going to be heading towards a Trey Young type of scenario where we see Memphis settle and sell low for a player that was one of the bigger stars in the NBA, just half a decade ago, just 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know. We'll have to see how this ends. But let me know in the comments below who you think an actual destination for Morant might be. Where will he end up?